That's me.
All right. Oh. Hello?
Hi, everybody.
Can you hear me?
Yes, can you hear me?
Can you? Yeah, okay. Hey, everybody. This is my name is Al. Welcome to the Coda July NYC, well, really kind of virtual worldwide meetup, I guess you could say. But this is our, I think, second or third virtual meetup, and really excited to have Ariana Cofone from Decoded. She's going to be talking to us about her background, what she does at Decoded, what Decoded is as a company, and also really amazing doc that she built to kind of work around all the new processes that are taking place at Decoded as a result of COVID, and just in terms of like streamlining a bunch of workflows at her company. And before we begin, I'm going to kind of just talk a little bit, talk with Ariana about who she is, her background, and we'll just then go along and she'll then start showing her doc on the screen. And if at any point in time, if you have any questions, feel free to leave a question in the chat or leave a comment. And I'm sure Ariana will be very happy to answer any questions that come up. So Ariana, thank you so much for being a part of this meetup.
Al, I'm so pumped to be here. I am hopefully with a bunch of operational technologist nerds, they're my people. So I'm beyond pumped that we could discuss all things Coda and process and technology and ops today. This is my happy.
Yeah, sweet. Before we begin, I know people are still trickling in. I just wanted to kind of ask everyone in the audience, let's quickly, if you want to go in the chat, just write in where you're dialing in from. Most likely from New York, but I'm sure there's people from out of state. So just type in the chat and just say where you're from. Joey says Hell's Kitchen, Los Angeles, Denver. Okay, so not New York for sure.
Oh my God,
right.
my husband joined.
I'm Coda HQ, so that's Upper East Side, New York. Cool. So a little bit of East Coast, a little bit of West Coast. That's great to see everyone participating. So thank you again for coming. And Ariana, I just wanted to kind of kick it off and ask you more about you, like your background, how you got into technology, and ultimately into your current role as VP of Operations at Decoded. So the floor is yours.
Yeah. So I think I should preface with I'm a weirdo and I embrace my weirdness of my background. I sort of have followed passions and puzzles in my life. So my degree actually, if we want to go back there, I got my degree in acting and did that whole afterlife thing. Was a nomad for a while and I traveled the world for about 8.5 months and just spent so much time seeing the world and how people live, which was amazing. When I moved to New York is when I really started my operations life. So for about 2 years, I was a COO for a food startup in New York that had aired on Shark Tank. And that was a really kind of, crash course in operations and supply chain management and just the food industry in general. And now I pivoted that at some point to technology because I think anybody in operations has to be a technologist to some degree. So I went back to school. I went to a boot camp, learned full stack web development, and then I had taught it for a while as well. So I really had kind of this weird background. And Al, that's where we met is at Decoded when we were teaching together. And you're this Excel wizard, and I was this dev nerd. And I did that in a creative technologist capacity for about 2 years. So part of that was teaching, part of that was creating tools for clients. And then I just sort of, admitted I am a technology operational nerd. I need to go back into operations, which is why I went into the role as VP of operations. And it's been this wonderful mesh of education and technology and HR and operations that just makes my days super full and happy.
I think I asked you this before, but what was there a person or experience in your background where you're I want to move from acting into basic technology? Was there something that inspired you to make that change?
Yeah, I mean, I think, when I graduated from school, I'm like, oh, why did I get a degree in acting? God, what can I be used for? And the interesting thing about, I think, acting and the arts is that you can use that mindset in anything that you do. So whether it's operations, whether it's math, whether it's finance, whatever it may be, the way that an artist thinks is really applicable. Creativity is in whatever we do. And I found technology to be incredibly creative because you're solving puzzle after puzzle after puzzle. And how I approach technology is I mentally visualize what I'm trying to build for people. And then I make it happen with the tools I have in my tool belt. So that's kind of like where I had that connection. And honestly, my husband was just like, you should try coding. You like puzzles. Why don't you give that a roll? And then, of course, I became this like coding addict because it's just, I mean, if you aren't a technologist to that level, give it a try. I mean, there's so many free resources and you'll start to, oh, my husband just commented, but you'll start to see that it's not as difficult as you think it is. And if you come from a background that's not technical, you can bring so much to the field because you think differently than just out of the box technologists.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned
story.
Cool. Yeah, no, that's I wonder how many technologists are from your background where it's like completely somewhat unrelated, and then they move into a role like yours. But you mentioned the creative aspect of building tools. Like, what were some of the first tools that you built back when you first started like doing the full stack development and all that stuff?
Yeah, I mean, the first tool I built was a game. And I think that if you're learning how to code, they say challenge yourself by building a game. And I loved Space Invaders. And I love Liam Neeson at the time. And so I made Space Invaders with Liam Neeson. And that was kind of like where I got into just understanding how gaming and game development is actually incredibly difficult because there's a lot of math and a lot of tools that you're kind of putting together. But the next thing I did was, I think another basic thing is a to-do list app. And what I've learned in operations is that most of the things that I ended up creating through my years as a technologist are a to-do list app in some way, shape, and form, but just more robust. So that's kind of when I don't know, it sounds so boring, but it's really fun. I like to take human problems and then, piece together a technical solution that makes their lives better and easier. You should only have to do something once. And if you're not, usually there's a technical solution to help people. So that's kind of the mindset I think of when I'm building tools for people.
Mm-hmm. And can you tell us more about what Decoded is and what kind of products and services you offer?
Thanks. So Decoded is a technology education company, and we have two different types of products. We have, virtual / in-person training pre-COVID, where we give you a crash course in emerging technology. So back in the day, we did blockchain when blockchain was booming, full stack web development, cybersecurity. But most recently, we've pivoted to AI, machine learning, pretty much a lot of things within the data realm, since that is affecting us all in so many different capacities. And then we also, the other part that we do is we have a data academy. So we then teach people how to actually do the skills of data analysts and data scientists using companies' data. So we like to embed ourselves and then teach you how to do what you need to do on the job.
Mm-hmm. Have you seen any topics that have been more requested as of late from your clients that they want to learn and they want their employees to learn?
Yes, I think definitely everything like the AI umbrella is something that everyone thinks they know, but they really don't understand. Mm-hmm. Artificial intelligence is a really broad field, and you can break it down into so many different segments of learning what it is. So we specialize in machine learning, but you can think about it within data visualization, data analysis. There's all these kind of different sectors. But I think we see a lot in just what is machine learning? How can I use it? Like, what are neural nets? And then especially how do we visualize it to learn and to make decisions on? We as humans learn best when things are visualized. And so if we can take data from that really boring, Excel flavor into something visual, it's much easier to comprehend and make decisions on.
Gotcha. Okay.
Oh, also, just because I think this is really important, data ethics is a really big thing as well. So understanding how data is collected, how essentially algorithms are made, and how that can influence decisions is also a really hot topic for us.
Mm-hmm. So it seems like everything is really revolving around data and it's all its great glory.
Yeah, I mean, it really has evolved. I think when you and I worked together, it was way more about web development and blockchain. And it shifted so much because everybody has so much data and they have no idea what to do with it. And everybody needs to be able to use it. But again, nobody knows what to do with it. So that's kind of where we come in, is connect the dots and help people to understand.
That's really cool. Yeah. If you're just joining the Crowdcast, the meetup, this is the Coda July NYC meetup with Ariana Cofone, and she's going to be talking to us about a beautiful Coda doc that she built for her team at Decoded. I guess last question before we get into your doc, maybe kind of like a little more personal one. Like, what are there any new interesting habits or hobbies that you developed since we're all being in quarantine right now, and you're in New York, you're in Midtown Manhattan. Curious, anything that you developed over the last couple of months?
Well, I have developed a pretty intense video game habit. My husband and I are playing The Last of Us 2 together because we're too afraid to play it alone. So it's an amazing video game.
Okay.
I'd highly recommend it, but it's really an incredible mix of storytelling and horror and all these great things. Joey, my husband, agrees. It is so good. And the other thing I started picking up was the ukulele. So I know, random, but I have a big background in music. I used to play the guitar and the cello and the piano and sing opera and jazz, musical theater, all that sort of stuff. And I've been really far away from it because I've been in operations and technology. So I was like, you know what? I got so much time on my hands. Let me just start to learn how to play it again. So it's been really fun to just do something tactile. I'm not sure if anyone else feels that way. Like, I'm Zoom meeting fatigued and I need to just do something with my hands, whether that's cooking or playing the ukulele.
Yeah, I started picking up the piano keyboard again. Like, I haven't played in since I was in high school. So learning some jazz piano, and then
cool.
I think in terms of tactile, I think I started learning. I started taking French lessons on Duolingo. So I guess a different sense, like the voice or whatever. So yeah,
I love it.
Cool. Well, thank you for that intro. Really appreciate it. And I guess why don't you just walk us through really quickly, high level overview of your doc, and then we'll get more into the nitty-gritty of how you model different processes into your Coda doc.
For sure, let me just say, I always try, when I'm making a process or a document, I always start with a problem. I think it's really important that we're not just making processes to make processes. That doesn't help anybody. So the problem I was trying to solve in this case was we, before COVID, would travel globally, facilitating and delivering sessions to clients around the world, every time zone. So we had so many logistical pieces that had to be perfect, from flight arrangements and travel arrangements to the venues to coordinating different technologists to be able to facilitate. So then, coming back from that session and communicating with the client, there was so many steps in the process. And what we found over time, and I'm sure many of you maybe feel this way, is you have a platform that you've used and you outgrow it. And when you outgrow it, you all of a sudden start making all of these tangly processes in Google Sheets and documents and Slack channels, and it becomes really convoluted, and you really can't figure out where the truth of your data is without investing in a huge infrastructure overhaul. So I walked into Coda pretty much at my wit's end. I was like, I am so over all of these hacks we've tried. I really want to find a tool that's smart, that allows us to be able to make processes smart for people.
Yeah.
So,
and you mentioned you were using Google Sheets. I think Google Apps Script at some point as well. Is that right?
Oh, yeah. We went down that rabbit hole real hard. So we pretty much any rabbit hole we've gone down, because you really try and stretch the tools that you have. And another important point is that you don't just want to start with the problem. You want to embed a process in the tools that people are using. And that's really important. You can make something totally separate, but if it's not aligned with the rest of your workflow, people aren't going to use it. I'm sure folks on this Meetup have experienced that, where they make something beautiful and nobody looks at it. So the goal is, how do we get people to engage in it and make it part of their everyday workflow?
Right. Okay.
So let me show you a flavor. So just to be very transparent, this is a light flavor of how we're using it. But the goal is managing your team's time. And what I love about Coda, and I know that I'm on a Coda meetup, but y'all, I've tried every tool in the book. What I love about Coda is it's not just a process sort of document. It's really it's a README. It's a way to interact. It's a way to comment. And this is where I find if you want to be able to use it in the future, start with the kind of global event manager page. You have the README that essentially gets people to engage with it right from the start. So pretty much where I want people to begin is click on a button and just start to enter in information. So I use the calendar functionality heavily in Coda, especially when it integrates into Google Calendar and invites people. Mm-hmm. So,
and these are. And can you tell us like what are these events that you're adding when you click on the button? This is.
So for us, they're workshops, but I can see that as client meetings. It can be anything where you have to coordinate logistics, typically around a client or something external.
Oh, so this could even be like an account executive meeting with a client to talk about their learning, like. Yeah. Okay.
I tried to make it malleable for that, but I could also see it being great for potentially teachers if they have like they're trying to keep schedules or they're trying to do certain things. I guess the baseline is if you have something that you need. If you have something where a calendar is very helpful and managing your people's time is integrated, this is a great template for you to work with. So this button gets you to add a calendar event, but maybe I should backtrack and show you how the data is stored. I am like know how the data is stored so that I know how to use it. So you've got these like high level tools that are what you use on a daily basis. The databases are where you're going to store all this lovely information. So if you were to start to use this template, I would start looking at this database.
And how did you think about, why did you create, this is a pretty common pattern we've seen a lot of Coda docs. I'm curious like how you thought about like putting all these databases like in this folder. Was that like intentional or did that kind of come about as you were figuring this out?
Hell, it came from a lot of failures when I was using it.
No, you learn from failures.
You do learn from failures. So I think the key with Coda is you want to input the data once and you want to have clean data. So the best way to do that I have found was using this sort of database folder where you write things once and then you use drop-down functionality. So I think the goal that we always had is, oh my God, somebody's name is spelled 3 different ways. I can't track where they are. Just simple things around dirty data that make all of our lives a bit of a nightmare.
You have like 3 different Google Sheets and that same name is like capitalized differently or missing a letter or something.
Yeah, you're giving me flashbacks.
No, we've all been there.
Like, no, but this is where this makes it a lot easier. So like this is dummy data, but you can have a client and then their location and you can have an internal lead. And when you see that the information has this like circle around it, that means that this information is getting pulled in from another sheet. And this is where you write it once and you interconnect all the data together. So the location is coming from this other data type, locations. And then the internal lead is coming from a facilitator database. So this has like your team lead on it, their region that they're overseeing, their location, monthly base and max, so you can track where their time is being used. In this case, we use it for events, but people can use it for meetings or anything client facing.
For Decoded, are those like hours or?
Those are workshops. So
workshops, okay.
Yeah, at some point, like, man, I would love for our teachers to be able to duplicate themselves because they're so brilliant. But, you know, we all have human limitations when we're teaching or facilitating workshops. So this we use to say, all right, they're hitting their max this month. Let's like bring it back a little bit. And then we have the email and the phone, which this is a really easy way to then integrate into Google Calendar or to use the Gmail automation functionality. I'm a huge fan of that, Al. I love your Gmail automation. Clicking a button and having a template sent is just dreamy. It's so good. And I know that you used it for your wedding vendors, right?
Yeah, so I had a table back when I was doing the wedding planning last year, I had a table like this, an email address in one column, a standard template, and I would just click all the buttons and send every single vendor the same exact email, asking like, hey, what's your cost for flowers, or what's your cost for music and DJing and stuff like that, instead of doing it inside the Gmail like browser app or whatever. So. Which
is so smart. I remember when you told me that, I was so pissed because I just got married and I didn't know Coda at that time. About how much time that would have saved me just in the long haul. So you can kind of set this up to think of different functionality that you can use. And again, you can think about Slack. You can think about if you use Asana, a lot of these tools integrate, or if it doesn't automatically natively integrate with Coda, Zapier does. So you can really stretch how all these pieces in your team's tools connect. Now, what this all comes down to is when you make an event in the calendar, which I'll show you in a second, this is where all that data is stored. So this is essentially like a mock database that you're able to do this. So this is where, this is essentially like if you were to use more of a robust database, you could transition this to it if you wanted to. But really, Coda can support a lot of data entries. So, you can use this.
On that first page, and you click a button, you enter in the event, and it ends up in this master event database.
Yeah, let's give it a roll. So you can either do it from this README that allows you to kind of figure out the lay of the land, or you can go into the calendar, which is, again, one of my favorite views. It takes that database table and just shows it. And you just easily say, okay, the new event, let's just do a client. Let's just say Burns Industries. The business unit that we're going to talk to is operations. The team is actually in the US. The event status is unconfirmed. We're still confirming it with a client. This is where I gave different types of events. So you can say it's a dinner, it's a lunch, whatever it may be. This is more in person. I guess nowadays it'd be like, oh, it's a Zoom meeting, or, it's a Zoom webinar or something along those lines. When you put in the calendar date and time, this is where you start to create the calendar event in this view. And then you add the time zone in. So this is where, let's just say New York. So you can do time zone functionality as well. And then you just say, we are doing a virtual dinner client. Now, this template isn't connected to a Google Calendar, but ours is. So when you click add, it just automatically makes that event straight into your Google Calendar. So it just adds it there and blocks it out, which is, I live by my calendar. So that's really important to me.
And whose calendar does this get added to? Is it like a team calendar or an individual's calendar?
So for us, it's a team calendar because we're managing global kind of workshops happening. But you can also easily do it to your personal calendar. So it just depends on what you prefer, but we do it globally. Okay. And then, so when you put it in there, and let's just look at the date. Today's July 7th, right? Then it's in there, Burns Industries. And then you can always change it to confirmed, and it can change the color, which is cool. We're a big color kind of coding company. And then you can view it through a different lens. So once you add it to the calendar, typically with an event, there's other shit you have to do. And you can't do it necessarily in that view. So I made this global event view that allows you to just see everything in a bird's eye view. And so you can see all of the information you inputted, the event overview. You can, the client confirmed this, they signed the contract, here's the address, the venue booked, client follow-up. And then you can update the calendar with these details. Again, these days you're going more virtual, but it's so malleable. You can, as we start to transition post-COVID, it's really easy to shift to in-person, scheduling. And then I love, I love these event status, like these drop downs. So you can do this like filter category where you create these, interactive filters that you can say, hey, I want to just look at the confirmed, and you can like delete everything else. Boop. I just want these. And I want to know what's happening with this, the US team and not the Apac team. And then you can just look at that view. We rely on that really heavily, especially the date one, because we deal with a lot of date ranges. So yeah, this is just it's just an easy way to see everything in one place. And then I also integrated the time tracker, which is really important. So this allows you to be able to see, what are people's monthly base and monthly max, and then how many things are they having each month, just so we know that they're not getting overloaded with meetings, events, obligations.
And these are these facilitators or like?
In our case, they're technologists or client folks, but it really can be anybody on your team. You have to constantly think when you're managing processes and people, when are we overloading them? When do we need to just kind of like step back and give them some time away from people or Zoom meetings, right? When can we just give them some time to chill? So I think it's good to be conscientious of those obligations. And this is a way to track that. I also just did a by person view too. So you can also just like pick one person and filter what their obligations are as well. So this could be great for line managers just to understand, all right, like what's, why is their time so crazy right now? What's going on? And this has been really helpful, I think, for our global team as well.
Okay.
And then the last bit, I think I just put a request in, which is if you have a request, and this is something that we added, I was like, just put it in here, like say your date, your name, what urgency level, and like what you want to be included in Coda. And then I just started adding it to our queue of things to do.
Okay.
That's why it's a one-stop shop. Like the goal is that you have everybody use everything at one place instead of having to get a Slack or an email or a message. They can just put it all here, and then there's just feedback right in Coda.
Very cool. This is great. I have so many questions. I'm wondering who is the main, like there's in Coda world, we talk about there's like someone who creates a doc, someone who like edits it, like maybe they'll check off like client confirmed or whatever. Then there's people who just view the doc because they just need to get information. I'm curious who those different audiences are for you and this doc at Decoded. Like you're obviously the one making the doc. I'm wondering who are the ones that are actually going there, clicking on drop downs, and who are the ones that are just like, I just need to see information and view something.
Well, yeah. So I'm the mad scientist, right? So
you're the creative technologist.
I'm a beautiful mind in this realm. But I think initially we were like, okay, I want to have my client people be able to confirm, when things are done, when did the client confirm this date? When did the contract sign? Is the venue booked? Are there client follow-ups? For us, it was also like travel logistics and like we have surveys that we do. So it's like, did you create that link? It started with just kind of the client coordinators and then the delivery team using this. Now it's expanded to so many different parts of the business because I just keep adding into the Coda ecosystem. So now we have all global client folks that are shifting to this. All global facilitators will be shifting to this. I'm starting to get the finance team to shift to this so we can track different kinds of financial pieces of the pie. And then pretty much we also look at it from a projection standpoint. It's really, the whole team is using it to a different capacity because we slowly keep figuring out different ways to get creative with how we're doing operations in it.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's really, again, it comes to how can I solve this problem in the same place with clean data? And that slowly has migrated people to using this because I'm like, clean data, put it here, clean data, put it here. And then I'll like sweeten the deal by being like, oh, you want that Gmail, integration? I got you. You want that like Cal integration? I got you. Oh, that Slack integration? I got you. Because then people just start to see that it seems like a Google sheet on steroids, but it really is so much more than that. And I'm not just like singing your praises. We've used so many tools, and I find that this is malleable enough that I can make it custom to our needs, but it's not so bespoke that I'm having to go in and code, which just so much time, as any developers or technologists know.
Yeah, I think a lot of teams, like you said, like you guys have gone through so many different tools. And I think a lot of people, when they get feedback or when they get a new tool introduced to their team, they're like, oh my God, it's like another tool I have to like learn. We just picked up like Salesforce like a year ago. Like, how did you, given your role, how did you convince people that, hey, we should move all our data from Google Sheets into a Coda table, all our data from, Slack messages to here? Like, what was that conversation like internally for you to get buy-in from like the client team and facilitators and everyone else?
It's still happening. I think people are resistant to change, period. And especially because if you've been whiplashed by so many tools, this will solve it, this will solve it, this will solve it. When somebody puts another tool, they're like jaded at that point. And it's worthwhile to be like, I get it, you're jaded, so am I. I'm really trying to solve a problem that you have and do it in a smart way. So really, for me, part of it was showing instead of telling. So much of it is just feel it, just try it, just it's a prototyping tool, just test it out. The benefit of that too is then they start to make suggestions and then they become a part of that creation process as well.
Oh, interesting. So you involve them in like the building of the doc kind of.
Oh yeah, that's user testing basics, which is, make it scrappy, get it to the users that are going to be using it, and then get their feedback and implement it. So I pretty much got a baseline and then sent it to my team to test. I told them, break it, come back to me, let me know what you need. And then I just started building what their feedback said. So this has constantly been changing. I mean, it's not static at all. It's such a different thing than it was, 2 months ago, let alone 6 months ago. And that comes, I think, from being open to change and just like letting go of rigidity around process.
Yep.
If people don't use it, let it go. No one, I mean, you're gonna fight the fight by yourself. I think really it's just proof is in the pudding. Does this make your life easier? Do you have to write it once and then it gets done in different views and different functions? It just makes it worth their time.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned like it's changed a lot over the last 2 months. I remember when we first started talking about this doc, you said like internally your processes changed ever since the pandemic hit.
Oh, yeah.
Because obviously you're not doing in-person workshops anymore. So can you talk about like how, even like thinking outside of Coda for a second, like what kind of processes you guys had to build internally to handle, the crisis and also your business?
Yeah, I mean, I think I told you, I was like, I launched this like amazing Coda like V1, and then COVID happened. Changed. At that moment, I was like, oh my God, this is so maddening because I just launched this. And then I had that reflective moment that they said, oh, thank God I just launched this. Now I can track. So we tracked where our workshops were based on, the CDC level, the threat level initially. So we were tracking literally the migration of the virus through COVID and how that affected our different workshops, like on a daily basis.
Wow.
And that I feel like we've all felt it in a different way. For us, it was just such a wave because we have a team in Hong Kong and Australia. So we saw that just happen just from like east to west. So that was just a huge helpful tool saying, okay, we have all these workshops in, what still might happen, what's going to be pushed back, what's going to be pivoted to virtual. And then once we got past the initial like, whoa, okay, this is actually happening, and we went into virtual land, then it started changing a lot of our processes. Now I have certain things like I just automate, Zoom link creations. So whenever we have a session that gets put in or a workshop, a Zoom link just gets made, and that just now is part of it. So it's one less manual step to do. And as we start to get smarter with how we use these tools, the automations that we keep, tweaking help to make it just smarter and cut down on human error, and get people to use their time in a better capacity. I don't want you making the same calendar invite for all of these workshops. I want you to use your brain to solve more problems or interact with clients or, to learn about technology. Like, let's stop this. So that's how we've seen it shift over time. And it's continuing to do so. I feel like every week a new request gets put on my plate that I think, oh my God, that's brilliant. And now I need to find time to implement it.
Okay. Back to the doc, I'm wondering, are there certain like views of the data that you guys maybe look at like more than others, like during meetings or during stand-ups? I'm curious, like what gets looked at the most, like how you guys talk through different views during a meeting per se.
Yeah, so I think a big thing is the calendar. So we have different color coding based on the region of the world. So we've got like 3 main offices. So if I'm looking at just US sessions, I can filter this just based on US sessions. So we look a ton at the calendar just because it's so easy. And then if you hover it, you can see it, you can comment on it, which I love, right? Like you're like, ow, check in on this. Which is just a great thing when you're kind of navigating this. I also love to see the activity where you can just see what tracks that data entry, which is, you can do that in Google Sheets and in Excel, but it's just so much more tangly. I know you're an Excel like guru, but, this is so much easier to see than, working in Excel and kind of going back in the history.
Yep.
So this is a big thing. I think also the global event view is something that we use a lot. And actually, like, I would love to add something while we're talking, because I realize this is a huge, I'm going to show everybody how to add a time filter, because that's something that we use a ton. So when you want to add like a date filter, and then I use this one, use an interactive filter, and then I just say create control. And this then allows you to have the date range. We use this a ton. And it's so, you just saw that. That's so easy to do. and I say this with like, we use this literally all the time because we're constantly trying to project what's happening in the future and making sure that we're taking care of our team. So I think that the calendar view is just easy to look at in one place. Again, you want to visualize that data and centrally. And then when we kind of break all of these statuses down, then we can easily be able to see, who's doing what needs to be followed up on.
Interesting. By the way, if anyone in the meetup, if you have a question about Ariana's doc, feel free to just chime in, add a question in the chat, and she'll be happy to answer. So are you the one that's in charge of seeing like, hey, someone, a technologist or someone is overloaded, and then like, how do you respond to that type of, I guess, data points in this?
Yeah. I think it's really important to set clear parameters for expectations when it comes to people's time. And, we haven't done it perfectly. We're still learning how to do it, especially virtual workshops are very different than in-person workshops. So we're learning the thresholds of people's bandwidth and their like mental space of what they can do. But I use this as a quick overview just to kind of track this. And again, Al was kind enough to put in a bunch of dummy data, but typically, when someone gets to that monthly base or monthly max, I actually have color coding that alerts me. So it's red if it's like at the monthly max, it's green if it's at the monthly base. And again, that's just a visual thing of like, I need to check in with this person or maybe reassign them to do something else. And then I think just looking at people filter, like for those of you who are managers or, people who are in charge of teams, when you do one-on-ones, it's just an easy way to say like, okay, and like, what's on your docket? Let's just take a look. And then it just updates live and you can kind of see what's going on in her life. And you can talk about each of these things because typically, there might be some stress or some to-dos that are coming out of it that they need help with. And we have other ways in which we're managing people's time as well. But from a high level, this tab really can help you be able to do it.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Cool. So this is the main doc that you built for your team. Have there been other docs that you created that, I know we can't look at them now, but like, are there any other use cases that you saw Coda for after you saw like this team time manager use case?
Yeah, I mean, so this global team manager that I made is like a template for you all is really like our light version, like very, very light version of how we use it. What I ended up doing was creating an external financial document that then ties to this. So again, what I love about Coda, and Al, you told me this because I'm like, can I segment some of the things that we're doing here into different views? This event database, you can have two Coda docs that talk to each other with the same data. So I have two Coda like environments that use the same event database to read different information. And that's just a great way. So, if you enter in data in one tab, it gets read to that other document. And that is really important. Or like if you update the client database here to add different clients, that other document can read that as well. So again, you're entering it once and you're not duplicating work. I don't want to duplicate work. I don't have time for that. So I find that that's something that I start to segment out. And eventually I think our document will become too big that I'll have to segment it out even smaller. But that also comes with a team. As a team grows, you have to segment it in a different way. Right now, we're lean and mean and we're working globally to do a lot of things. So it's easy to have it in one view, but we'll start to segment it out.
So like you have the client database here and the event database, that's like the master database for like other Coda docs that need to see that data?
Yeah, I'm like, because I'm lazy, guys. Like, it's just developers are lazy. We don't want to have to work hard. We want to work smart. So I'm going to put something here and read it once. And if you want to add other columns, that's cool too, because then that can then be read in different documents. But then I know that if I enter it once here, then it'll update in all the other documents. So you have this like structured like central database of different specializations that then you're kind of reading out to these other documents without having to go full like dev nerd database, which is just such a pain in the ass. So I'd rather do this right now than have to kind of roll with going on a custom database solution.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, because I think sometimes I run into scenarios where like someone's like, we want to have this be our master database, and we want to send that data to other docs, but then like that first database is way too big. At one point, it's like, at what point do you just put this in a MySQL database where it's like more performant and fast?
Yeah.
But that's like a different conversation to have down the line.
I think the short, we've thought about that a lot, and I showed it to other technologists on my team, and they're like, yeah, it's cool, but like we're gonna have to think about finding a platform later on. And I'm like, friends, I have looked for the platform. It's not there. It's not out there. So we're using, this is a great way to prototype what you think you want to build custom in the future. And
Right.
When it gets to the point, like I think sometimes we're looking for a tool that fits the way that we're working now, instead of figuring out a better way of working and then either building or finding the right tool. We found that in our research. It's like we were trying to find this really like unicorn platform that just didn't exist. And so Coda was a way to build it and prototype it for the eventually we might move it to something, more, I guess, database centric, more legit developer kind of like realm. But for right now, this fits our uses. I can easily update things, and it's not a big thing because I'm learning how people use this, and they're learning how to use it. Yeah. So I would encourage people like use this as a prototyping tool. It's great.
Yeah. No, a lot of people have done that. Like if you want to prototype like building a new app, for instance, like some people have used this as like, okay, I want to build this mobile app. I have a database and I have like some calculations and formulas and whatnot. Yeah. I'm curious, like more into the weeds of like some of the way you filter the data here. Like, did you have to write any complicated formulas to get the data to look the certain way you want it to? Or is it more or less like entering data into this table and not too many like formulas per se?
I got into some tangly stuff. I think when you add things to a calendar, what I learned, so I think just for those folks who are interested in, Google Calendar or Gmail, when you're looking into integrating your Google Calendar, this is where I started to segment out different things. Like we use the description field really in a detailed way. So we have like a whole other column that takes in all of these data variables and creates its own description, and then it just adds it. So that's when I started to get into more like tricky formulas was, okay, I've got all of these different like fields that are being entered in of all these individual pieces of data. How can I mesh them together to then be able to send an email or to do a calendar update? And that's where I think it gets a little bit tangly, but it's not hard. I mean, you saw like you could easily be able to be like, okay, I can make a quick prototype of this and then you can get into the weeds of it.
Yeah. So you're like concatenating different columns of data with like spaces and dashes and all that stuff.
Yeah, concatenating is the jam. I mean, it's always it's a pain in the butt, but like the results are so good. Especially like the email functionality, I love because you can. I mean, I'm a big emoji person, so you can add emojis, and then you can send. Pretty much, I have this template of an email, and then I inject that data and send it to the individual people because I've added them I've added their email here.
Right.
So that's where it gets smart. Where if you add in people, you assign them to different workshops, sessions, obligations, and then you can reference their email to send summaries of all the information for that event or that obligation.
And with these emails that you're sending with the Gmail pack, are they coming from you, Ariana, or from some other like email alias?
No, this was cool. So I had that moment where I was like, oh my gosh, are all these emails gonna have to get sent from me? I love people, but that might be a little bit much for my inbox. So you can actually do it two ways. You can either like use a specific account that you log into. So we have like a general operations Gmail that we can use to send out emails. Or you can just say, I want to use this specific alias to send it to and from so that people know, like, so it's always consistently the same. So that was like a happy little, like, I don't know, cherry on top that I found in doing the Gmail automation because I thought I would have to log in and it would become a thing, and I didn't have to do that. But you can if you want to.
Yeah. No, the reason I asked was there was this product manager I worked with like almost a year ago. He had this like PM doc where he was like he had this issue of like getting his team to like follow up on like the status of his tasks for a project. And so he created this Gmail button to like email them every single week. On like Monday at 9 a.m. But it was automated. So it was always like at 9 a.m. Eastern on Monday morning. And he got so much more work done because like the email came from him, and people are like, "Oh man, you're so always following up with me like all the time. It's coming from you." I feel so like personalized. He has like you have the name of the task in the email, and so it was like he made it seem like he was emailing him personally, and coincidentally he called the doc like his robot product manager doc because like he was automating himself, but people thought it was kind of him. Eventually they caught on, but that's
No, I will say you can make it as like, you can make it feel like a human, which is great. I mean, you can send it from yourself. So in my case, I had like 3 people that was on this email alias, and we all needed to get these email notifications. So the cool part was I could just use that alias, and all of us were getting these email alerts and these email updates. So again, that just cut down on communication. So someone would be like, "Yo, did you send this?" Like they saw it in their inbox because it was done automatically, and that made it easier for me. But then I can always be, coy and be like, "Oh yeah, I'm working," but really it's an automated. That's always fun.
I guess looking to the future.
Ooh.
I know you said that this is a living doc. It's constantly being built on and improved upon.
Yeah.
What are some new features, new processes, new ways that you're handling like how the business is running? What are those new features you're trying to build into the doc, or even like a new doc too?
Yeah, I think for me, the 3 things I keep thinking about are, I think most of us have the situation where we have all these tools that live outside of our central place that we need to use it. So we have like our sales management version of Salesforce. We've got our email, we've got our Slack, we've got Asana that we use sometimes for task management. We've got all these different tools. So my next step is anything that's not integrated into Coda is going to get into Coda. Like, I don't care, you get into Coda some way. I want to make sure that we have a clean way of managing our data from the start to the finish of using it. So that means when we have a sales opportunity that is cleaned and entered into data or entered into Coda so we can see it, that then can be entered into the logistics side of things, that then could be entered into the invoicing side of things. And I really want that whole journey to be centralized in Coda. So part of that is, getting our sales tool to be integrated, getting our survey tool to be integrated into Coda. So again, like when you click this like new event, how can, with that, add to calendar button, how can you add it to your Google Calendar? How can you create a Zoom link? How can you, add a Slack post for people? How can you do all of these things with the click of one button? And what I keep telling people is like, enter it once, and I'm going to make that work in every other stream of your workflow. That's the ultimate.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. So, but right now there's still like quote unquote copies of like an event or something in other tools.
No. So we use this. Well, okay. So I guess in some cases, but I'm slowly archiving them. I think.
Okay.
All of us have sort of gotten the like, look at this really cool tool. And they're like, but my Excel document, I cannot give it up.
Oh, yeah, I know how my coloring works and conditional formatting and stuff, yeah.
So I'm slowly getting people to migrate it. But it's cool. You can use things like Zapier and those type of tools to automate with Google Sheets. So I then can still use Coda for myself, and somebody who's attached to their Google Sheet can have that information too. It is like kind of like unique tool that they've made for themselves. But I want to centralize all of the different workshops that we do here. And I think we're maybe like a month or 2 out from doing that, which is great.
Yeah. And I know Decoded's like headquarters is in the UK.
Yeah, London.
Okay. London, yep. Right. How has it been like communicating like the processes, the Coda doc you built with like headquarters, who probably has their own ideas for how things should be running, how tools should be looking?
It's a negotiation. I mean, listen, again, people don't like change, but right. I do think that people know I've been on so many different sides of the business that I really just want to make things better for them. That's like always the ultimate goal is I just don't want to make more work for you. I want you to use your time in a better way. So let me help you by creating this and making it smarter for you. So really, I think when you're considering doing a document like this, you have to make sure that you're getting people to understand it and test it out. So the great thing was we had folks in the UK that I was like, hey, I've made this thing. I've globalized some parts of it. Will you just like test it out? Will you just use it? And then in that way, you can kind of expand upon the different functionality. So we entered in time zone functionality, which then reflected in how we updated the Google Calendar, which how we then sent Slack posts, right? So you start to have all of these different, when you add in time zones in itself, it changes the game, and you need a ton of eyes on it. So, so I think by people using it, breaking it, they've been able to buy into it. The next stage is now to make extensive documentation. So I'm relying heavily on these READMEs. I'm such a fan of these READMEs. I love them, and I'm going to be doing screen shares to walk people through how to use it. But we've moved our documentation into Coda. So that you can have everything in one place, which is important. You can't just make a process and then not document it for people and not train people. Right now, we just finished the process creation. We're finishing up the documentation, and then we're going to roll it out in a like a proper process flow, like a training process, which is an important piece and usually gets missed.
Yeah, someone in the chat, A. Willis, says you could try to choreograph it like a movie with a plot. I'm guessing, maybe he's referring to like you can, or he or she is saying like you should try to convince someone to use it. It's like or maybe it's like if you're recording screen shares, you could introduce it like it's like this is how we used to do things. Here's how we do things today, and like why it's better. And
that's a good point actually. Like remember these days, and they sucked. Now, you do. Yeah, I do need to hype this. I need like a hype person for my Coda doc, which might end up being myself, but I'm going to hype the shit out of this document. I need to remind people like, hey, remember when you had to upload these in like 3 different places? Oh, Joey's going to be my hype man. Thanks.
Yeah, a hype couple.
That's what husbands are for, I think you have to remind people. I think people get spoiled once they start using this, right? They start to then be like, oh, this is so easy. And you have to remind them, hey, like, remember 2 months ago when you had to do like these 3 things? This is what we've shifted to. And it just helps to contextualize what we're trying to do.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Cool. I think I don't have that many more questions, but I guess like I like to always ask like just our users in general, like what are some dream features that you hope to see? I think Ariana just left. Let me just try to re-invite her back into the screen. Sorry about that.
Sorry, my bad.
That's okay.
I tried to stop screen sharing and I just bounced.
That's all right. Won't keep you up too much longer. I know it's getting close to dinner time. I was gonna ask, what are some dream features that you hope to see, want to see in Coda that's like, like, oh, that would solve this use case so much better?
Oh my gosh. I think there's some simple things and there's some more dynamic things that I would love. I mean, I'm selfishly thinking through how do you educate people on a global scale. So the more things that we can do that globally, like time zone functionality, I know we have that now, but like the more things that we can just build initially from a global perspective, I think so many of us are navigating that. Even if you're just in the States, and if you're in the States, you're working with at least 3 to 4 time zones. So you're always having to think through it. So I think any sort of additional time zone functionality to make our lives easier would always be super duper dreamy.
Okay.
I guess to get inspired by Willis, it would be like maybe some way to do like videos or different ways of like screen sharing or things that, again, to like hype the things that you've done. Your documentation on READMEs are always fantastic, but I always want to, if you think about it, people, when they visually see something, they want to have different mediums and medias to look at. So the more that we can do videos and pictures and all of these things that you have integrated, just the easier we can make it, the better. I'm trying to think what else. I mean, that's all I really have right now. I'm surprised at my short list of dream things. I guess I am surprised at how much Coda does, to be honest.
Yeah, no, It surprises me all the time too. I mean, you of course know this. Like, people learn different ways, and so like I love documentation. I love writing things, how things work. But I also started doing just like a bunch of Loom and YouTube videos to explain like, here's why I built this doc, and here's how it works, and here's why I think you should use it. So I think having a mix of those two different types of media really helps for sure.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, people want to see a human to talk through a process. I mean, you could read something, but I'm a visual learner, so I want to see and feel a human that's passionate about that process. Explain it to me. Because
show me how your formula works.
Yeah, and I think that's where we're at right now. It's like, all right, I've gone into my mind palace, I've created the system, and now I have to externalize it to other people to then get them to really enjoy it and buy into it and nerd out with me. At the end of the day, I just want people to nerd out with me.
Well, that's what we're here for. So we know that you're obviously moving things and changing things internally in terms of processes and with this Coda doc. I'm curious more about like Decoded from an external perspective. What are some things coming in the pipeline in terms of how you guys are approaching facilitating workshops and doing learning, assuming that we're going to do things virtually for a while? What are some like things we should expect from, I guess, the company?
Yeah, it's cool. I mean, we've pivoted entirely to virtual delivery of our what we call our mindsets, or our technology mindsets. Where it's just, we figured out a way to do virtual workshops really from a really engaging standpoint. So you're not sitting at your desk for longer than an hour, you're engaging with your community virtually, and you're also engaging through different like survey tools. And our product team has done a fantastic job doing it, and doing it really fast, because we had done virtual work before, but we were so in person. So I just want to, if they're here, I want to give them a shout out, because I even have so much fun watching them, and I think people walk away really having learned something and rethinking how that webinars don't need to be boring, and virtual workshops don't need to be boring, which is just the biggest win, right? The other big thing that we're doing is we're rolling out this Global Data Academy. So we currently have over 1,000 learners globally on our Data Academy, but now we're making it a global version that will allow.
How is that different from the traditional workshops that you guys provide?
Yeah, workshops is like, my husband likes to say, it's like a SWAT team of technologists that come in for like a couple hours, give you the lay of the land, and then they're like good luck. It's like very Keanu Reeves style, and then like kind of like goes away. The Data Academy is the one that we're spinning up is a 6-month core track. So it's like, how do we embed the skills and teach you how to work in Python, and how do you bring data into Python, and how do you analyze and visualize within that platform? And what I really appreciate about that, having also done the whole bootcamp thing, you can learn a technology skill outside of a job, but usually you're using dummy data, open source data, you're using a different kind of data. If you're learning it inside of the job, you're applying it, and you're being able to learn it in a different capacity. And that's what our academy does, is we just say, okay, cool, we're gonna teach you these tools, but in the context of your job. So you can start to solve problems from like the first week that you're in this program. Because that just sinks in a different way.
So if I'm a part of this 6-month academy, like would I get instructions on saying like, hey Al, like go and get the data for your team or whatever data you're trying to analyze from like the database, and then analyze it with Python or SQL or something? Is that kind of how that works?
We have a fantastic technical onboarding team of technologists that essentially lay the groundwork, and they get all of the different tools that we use within the kind of new data analyst science realm to be approved in the company. So that when we start to do the different academies with different learners, they have the tools, and then they get access to their own data, which seems simple, but it's not. It's not always simple to get access to data. And our technology team really does that. So yeah, we really want to set people up for success, from getting them to work with their data, getting them to work with those tools right, on their work computers, and then connecting the dots initially, just to, again, not learn it conceptually, but also feel it. Oh, thanks.
Yeah, and I just a quick Google. I was curious about this. I think this is definitely like not a departure, but it's like a different product offering from Decoded that's like really, really cool. And I think a lot of my friends and colleagues who've taken these classes and workshops where it's like you're playing with like, sales data from like Walmart from like 2005, and it's like, how does this apply to my job? Like, I just don't get it. So I think the fact that you're using real data from your company for your use case is like just hands down the best way to do it. So
yeah, we say that we're just an embedded data academy. We want to be a part of like what you do, and we want to teach you from where you're at. That's the most important thing.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I mean, we're definitely kind of getting off of the Coda stuff right now, just talking about general things. But is there anything else that you want to chat about in terms of Coda or other processes?
Yeah. I think for anyone who's like listening today, I think what I've learned about operations in my many years.
Give us your wisdom. Yes.
This is my wisdom. Now that I'm in my 30s, here's my wisdom. You really need to make tools for people around a problem. And I think it's really important to define who's your audience that you're building a tool for and what is the problem that you're trying to solve. And don't be precious about how you build it. Build it, make it fast, make it scrappy, get it to the people that you're building it for and have them test it, get their feedback and implement it. That seems basic, but it's really hard because we're so precious about how we make things and we want it to be beautiful and all these things. You're not going to know how the team's going to use it until you get it to their hands. That's it. Just not going to know. Be humble in that truth, and then really come back to the people that you are making the tool for. Be generous in listening to them, and do more listening than speaking, which is ironic because I've been speaking for like an hour now. But just listen as much as you can and implement as quickly as you can.
Yeah, definitely. Wise words of wisdom from someone who's been in operations for many years. I'm just kidding.
Wrinkles show all the stressors of all the processes.
Great. Well, it's been an hour, and I don't want to take up too much of your time. If anyone else has any questions, feel free to leave it in the chat. Otherwise, this recording will be. I mean, if you're watching, but this recording for everyone out there will be live for you guys to watch over time. And I will share, I think I might write a quick summary of like our meetup today, and I'll share it with everyone who RSVP'd for the meetup. And just want to thank you again, Ariana, for joining our virtual meetup because everything's virtual now, as you know.
Yeah.
And thank you for walking us through your amazing doc as well. It's really good to see it kind of grow and expand and like reform to your use cases at Decoded.
Yeah, I mean, Al, I guess we've known each other for over 2 years now. I can't believe it. It's flying by.
I know, it's crazy.
But it's really been so great to learn. I've heard about Coda obviously for a while, but to be able to really use it is like truly a pleasure, and I don't say that lightly. So I hope anybody that's listening, if you're new to Coda, just give it a try. There's this whole suite of different templates that you can play around with. There's do you still have that template around like what should I care about?
Oh, actually, I brought that up with another person recently this week. How the art of not giving a fuck.
Yeah, if you read The Art of Not Giving a Fuck, I was like, hey, Al, there's this really great flow chart that you should make into a Coda template, and he did. So there's like really silly, fun things like that. But there's also serious things like the template I made that can hopefully help your workflow. And the way that you can share it on that gallery is so easy. So just experiment. Just like throw shit at the wall. Try it out. Be open to what may come, and maybe just be silly about it.
Yeah,
that's the good shit comes out.
I guess that reminds me, like, what when you first picked up Coda, like, what type of things helped you learn the best? Was it just you fiddling around, or did you like go to the community forum, or like the FAQs? What was like the biggest way to help you learn?
Okay, the Coda functions page was like that's on my like favorites tab. That's great if you're new to like Coda functions are slightly different than typical Excel functions, but usually you can just search it and you'll find the Coda flavor of it, and it's really easy. Mm-hmm. That was really important. The kind of template gallery, I had so much fun kind of playing around with. And anytime that I'm learning a new integration, I go to the template gallery. But straight up, just like GitHub, just like Stack Overflow, the community at Coda is where it's at. Like those kind of sub chains of like, I can't do this one crazy thing and somebody has solved it. There's a really good community of people that have gone down that path and want that to happen. So and oh my God, Alex, I forgot to mention your support. Your support's amazing.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Like back in the day, like we used to rotate support. Like I would be on support, then someone else would be on support the next day. But now we have a dedicated support team, and they're awesome. They're just like
So
super
good.
super awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, so sometimes I run into, because I don't have someone else that's like my rubber ducky in the business to like piggyback different formulas off of.
Mhm.
Your support is my rubber ducky. So if I ever hit
Okay.
a call, it's really easy. You just kind of chat someone. They get back to you like pretty quickly, within the hour usually, and then you can just share it, and they usually help you to fix the formulas. So there's really not been an issue that I haven't been able to get help with in those 4 different capacities.
Okay.
But it's nice because you know you're talking to a human, and they follow up with you, and they're like, "Yo, I haven't heard from you. Is everything okay? And get this resolved. How can I help?" Which just is so different from like chatbot land.
Yeah, they're really awesome. They have really like I still think like customer service, like in this case, like just doing support chat is like really helps so much in terms of your brand and like getting people onboarded and stuff. It's really important.
That's so good.
Yeah.
If anybody has questions, feel free to post them. I'll answer anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. If anyone has any questions, feel free to leave it in the chat. Otherwise, we can just call it, I guess, if you want to get back with the rest of your night.
Can I ask one question now before we go?
Sure.
What is a new release or a new functionality that you are super amped about at Coda?
Oh man. I mean, this is more for like a team perspective. Like I think it just came out 2 days ago. But you know how like when you open up a Google Doc or a Coda Doc, you can see like who's in it. Like there's a little circle. Like I think they call it the face pile. I think that's like the official UX term for it, the face pile. But now if you go to Coda.io, you see a list of all your docs, right? Like your most common docs. We're going to be adding the face. I think the face pile now shows up in their list of docs.
Oh, nice.
So if you have like 5 docs and you want to see like where's the way I think about it is like where's the party happening? You know, because like there's certain docs that get used more than other ones, and you're like, the first time when the feature came out internally, I was like, I had no idea this doc was being used so much. Like, why is this so important? And one of our most popular docs is like our what we call a quality tracker. Like when we have bugs, we log them there. And I'm like, why is everyone hanging out in this doc? Like I see all their little faces, and it's like 40, 50 people in this doc, and it means like 40 or 50 people have that doc open right now. Like they're active in it. So it's kind of like jumping into like a little party or a little room where everyone's hanging out, even though it's like a doc where it's like people are just like logging feature requests and stuff.
No, but I tend, even with like the bubbles in our document, I'm like, who's in there? You're like, who's kind of checking out what's going on? And it's funny because when you have people in different time zones, it's like people awake at any point during the day.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And they're using Coda. So you can kind of like peep in on them and see what they're doing, or they can see what you're doing.
Yeah. Well, and what's kind of creepy is like, I mean, this is common in other tools too, is you can actually click on that person's face in the top right, and it'll actually bring you to where they are in the doc.
Oh, that's cool. So you can like put little notes to them.
Yeah. So if you click on someone's person and like they're like in the README, you're like, oh, that person's reading it, or it's kind of like a way to spy on what they're doing in a way, but it's like it's just your teammates, so it's not like that big of a deal.
Dude, this is prime for pranks. I'm just going to say that. It needs to be some pranks that happen. That's how I'll be using it.
Yeah, so that's like one feature I'm pretty excited about, just to see where all the action's happening. I'm trying to think what else I can talk about publicly.
It's a sneak peek.
Yeah, that's the main thing. I mean, I think we kind of soft announced this a little bit, but like, you'd be surprised how many people want to be able to print their Coda docs into like nice PDFs.
Yes. Oh my God, Al, that is on my list. When is it happening?
Should be like in a week or a few weeks. I want to say like we have like dedicated engineers working on it right now, and like people actually want to print out their docs like on pieces of paper, which right now it feels kind of weird, but I think just being able to print into a PDF, like a nicely formatted PDF, like you're talking about, like how do I get an invoice into a nice format? That's something that we're working on actively and should be coming out in the next few weeks.
That has been on my wish list, and you reminded me.
Okay.
I will tell you, those community threads are passionate about that PDF button. They're like, when is the PDF button happening? But you know what it is like, especially if you're doing client-facing information, if you can press a PDF button and be able to just have it in like a nice kind of external facing flavor, it makes it cuts down manual labor. So again, we're lazy, Al. We just want it. We want to make our lives easier. We want it. We want it.
Yeah. So PDF, that's a big one that I know gets asked about a lot in the community, and hopefully we'll solve a lot of problems once it comes out.
Everybody, Al said it. So
it's coming out. I can't guarantee when, but it's definitely coming out at some point in the next couple of weeks.
Awesome. All right, that's great. That's music to my ears. This has been such a pleasure. I appreciate all of you hopping on. I hope I helped in some way. But if you do want to shoot me an email, feel free to. My email is super easy. It's just my first name, Ariana, ARIANA, at Decoded, DECODED.com. Feel free to shoot me an email. I'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, and I found that a lot of people end up watching these because not everyone can join at the same time. So a lot of people end up watching these recaps like a week or a month afterwards. So hopefully this will be educational content for them as they're building out their Coda docs and trying to optimize their processes. So
great. And if you email me, you better send a funny GIF. That's all I ask. That's how I know you listen to the end of the video.
Yeah, it's like, what did Ariana say at minute 30? That's the only way she's gonna respond to your email.
Anyway, Al, thanks for hosting and asking me to join. Thank you for everybody listening, and to the next level or time that we get to nerd out together. I'm excited.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, thanks so much, and thank you everyone for joining. And we'll see you at next month's meetup.
Bye, y'all.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Take care.